So the Chaim Livracha, also want to dedicate this to someone very special who passed away this past night and was buried today. Her name is Miriam Bat Rena, passed away in France, and her neshama should have an aliyah. Chaim Livracha. So this is Kuntres Umayin Mamer Chav Gimel 23. The Mamer 23. And we are in the middle of the Maimar 23, page 327. Derech Mashal. Adam haroye binyan gadol mefoyar, ha'im yale ladas sheshabeach es hagarzen shebana es habinyan sheemach kama meshubach hagarzen shebana binyan gadol mefoyar kazeh. It's a very interesting example. We're discussing here the concept of Avodah Zarah. World was created by Hashem. Adam was created by Hashem. No one At the beginning of creation, no one doubted the existence of God for a second. No one pretended, no one claimed to be self-made. Right? But after a while, how did it start? That people start to forget about the existence of God. It did not happen overnight. It did not happen by, they say, if you preach and repeat a lie many times, it slowly penetrates the minds and people start to believe it. That was not the case. No one lied at the beginning. It's much more powerful than that. Because how do you create a lie that is going to last? Right?
Truth.
You need to put some truth. You need to be moide b'miktsas. Moide b'miktsas means I partially agree. I partially agree that what Hamas did was horrific. But, when there's a but to what you're saying, this is when the problems are. But I also believe that what Israel is doing is horrific. It's like, I believe that Sinwar is a terrorist, but I think the Israeli Prime Minister and the chief of what's his name?
Just as bad as him.
Yeah. Right. And that's why the ICC is condemning them and put out a arrest warrant. So you want a lie to penetrate, to be heard, to be believed. You need to put some truth. And in the beginning, you need to leave 90% of the truth and put 10% of the lie. And how do you lie? You don't lie. I want to teach you how to lie. You say the truth and you add a but. You don't need to lie. Because when I say but, what am I trying to say? I don't disagree with you, but.
But doesn't sound, it's more like however.
However, it's too nice. Yeah. However, it's too nice. When you lie, you're really saying but. Yeah. Aval. Aval. But. All right. So my cheder Rabbi, my teacher used to say, oui mais ça veut dire non. Yes but means no. So, but you're not saying no. You're saying yes, but.
Just a nice way.
So what did they do? First Perek of Ilchos Avidas Kechavim Mazalis in Sefer Hamada in the Rambam. First Perek of Ilchos Avidas Kechavim Mazalis in Rambam. He says in the beginning everybody believed in Hashem, but the big Chachamim, the wise people came and said, "Don't bother him with your little things. He's way too high. He's way too elevated to deal with your little things." And for that, he appointed principals. He appointed ministers. They are in charge. Now, don't get me wrong. They're only here to do what he says. You see how you slowly create a narrative that we agree. But We disagree. Oh, that's exactly what we're going to say. Yeah. Right. If the one who has placed the ear to a person doesn't hear, if he created the eye, he can't see. So you're saying that because he's so high, so he's too elevated, he's too distant from the things he created? That's a contradiction. That's impossible. But that's how it started. From there, it went to, guess what? The more you put yourself in good terms with the ministers, the more you'll be getting from them, because they are the ones in charge. Who put them in charge? The big God. But they're in charge. See? And then get slowly to a point where, you know what? They are fully in charge because he doesn't need to get involved anymore. He's still there. And that's called Karule. We learned this in the beginning of Kuntres. Karule Eloka de Elokaya. He's the God of all the gods. And there is a paradox in this phrase. We learned this in Tanya, in Kuntres, and in Basi Regani, he talks about it in length. On one hand, when you say Karule Eloka de Elokaya, he's called the God of the gods. It sounds like you still recognize that there is a God. He's the God of all the other gods.
So that's like Shituf.
Yes. On the other hand, there is real Avodah. Shituf means pairing, associating other powers to the power of Hashem. It's denying the oneness of Hashem. That's monotheism means, that Hashem is the only God and nothing else. So the paradox of this phrase means that he's the God. So I recognize that he's the God. The problem is that the other sources, I call them other gods. That's the paradox. On one hand, Elikaya means that God is still a God. He's still a deity. On the other hand, calling the other idols Elikaya, I also attribute to them some kind of deity. And there's a paradox in it. On one hand, they recognize God. On one hand, they are really Avodah because they call those other sources Elikaya. They're also Elika. They're also a form of godliness. Chas v'shalom. What's the reason? We believe that only Hashem is in charge. What do you mean? There's so many ministers, so many powers here that are involved. Why is it that only Hashem is in charge? Because they are simply kegarzen beyad hachotzev. What's a garzen? An axe in the hand of the wood chopper. So here it goes. You're going to see a beautiful construction. And you say, oh my gosh, the crane is amazing. Look what kind of building the crane built. The axe is amazing. Fascinating axe. You gotta thank the crane, you gotta thank the axe. You have to thank the cement. The metal, such an amazing metal that can shape in such a way. He says, how beautiful is the building, the construction that this axe has built. I was thinking today, technically, you can have a self-built house, robotically, or I'm sure they could do it. Or 3D printing and stuff like that. So people's going to come, you see, it can be done by itself. Right? So how do you explain it? Back in the days, the man had to hold the axe in order to chop the wood. But today, you don't need it. But the same example is valid for the technology that is running the mounting. It did not happen by itself. The Rebbe writes in a letter in the 1950s about people questioning faith and science. The Rebbe says, two examples that are interesting. I mentioned them in the past. You see a car driving from far. You don't see the driver. when you fly or you're staying far, you see cars driving. You're gonna say, "Oh my gosh, there's some built blocks that are just moving around, circulating by themselves."
Well, nowadays.
Nowadays we could, but even so, and the Rebbe says, obviously, if you see a car driving, you know there's a driver. You're not saying it's driving by itself. That's what the other example the Rebbe gave was television. What's television? There's a box, and you see stuff in the box. Are you going to say that it's random? There's a piece, there's a wall, there's a screen, and suddenly images pop up out of the screen? No, there's a technology. There's someone behind it who's creating that. And I guess the fact that the Rebbe gave these two examples is answering for the progress and the evolution of technology, that even if today you can have a self-driving car, the self-driving car is being driven by someone who created that technology. Now you're going to say, what's with the AI? Artificial intelligence. And we'll get back, I don't know if tonight or in some other session, this in-depth discussion about artificial intelligence and the risks, the threats, and the huge benefits, and where are we heading with this. That's definitely something we need to discuss. So just like you see a building, and you're not going to say, "Oh wow, great job the crane, great job the axe," we said, or great job the robots. There's someone behind it. There's always the architect. There's always the engineer. There's always the designer. Usually, the edifice, the construction is named after the person who realized it. La Tour Eiffel. What's La Tour Eiffel? Eiffel Tower. What is Eiffel Tower? Gustave Eiffel built it. Even law. When a new law is passed, it's usually called by the person who drafted the bill or pushed. But the building is whoever was involved in building it. Didn't build by itself.
Because the way the world is, it's a lot harder to see how Hashem is
involved. I would say the opposite. Today, it's becoming more and more obvious that spirituality is real, genuine. Most of our activities are virtual today. Back in the days, people had no idea what virtual is. The fact that there's something that is not present that I'm able to tap into, right? That itself is a sign that, like data, information, messaging, internet, that's God. Right? Think about someone, he's going to think about prayer, Wi-Fi, wireless, Bluetooth. All of these ideas are just more and more demonstrations of the evidence that there is a spiritual driving force behind every physical matter. It's just very obvious. Back in the days, it was not. Back in the days, it was, I plant a seed, I see what comes out. Energy. Today, energy, emotions. Emotions today mean much more than what they meant back in the days. Mindset. The way you feel about something is what's going to have an impact on the matter. It might change the physical. It will change the physical. So all of that today is science. Today all of that is part of science. And it's obvious. But we know the axe is capable of doing what it's doing because there's someone holding the axe and acting with the axe in a certain way that makes and cuts and chops and creates and builds, or the hammer, or whatever it is, whatever tool. The axe is a tool. Right? So, same example is regarding to anything that Hashem provides to us. We think that based on how much I'm going to work is what I'm going to get. Why? Because I see that I'm in charge. I'm the actor. And the answer is that no, really, we are the acts. We're not the actors. We are in the hands of Hashem. And Hashem decides what to do. He's giving us an opportunity to participate in the process to a certain extent. And that's what we call our hishtadlus. We have to do our part. That's what we're trying to explain here. Let's read inside. Shefa, chayus, umazin ba'olam, any sustenance that Hashem is giving in this world, energy, food, anything that Hashem gives in this world, who's giving it? Ha'elokus, the divine. Ela, shenimshach al yedei hamazalis. It has to go through a process. The process, we call it the mazalis. What's the mazalis? The infrastructure of the distribution and the circulation of divine energy. It's an organization of channels that spreads and sends out the life and energy that Hashem has to distribute and spread throughout the many different worlds, spiritual and physical.
But isn't it also kind of like a filtration? Because if Hashem would just give it,
because of the factor, the reason that we're going to explain later. We'll discuss later. Why does it have to go through the mazalis? But who's giving it through them? They're only channels. They're channels through which Hashem gives. Vehu ha'ikari, he is the main part. Ve'hamazales ein nechshavim liklum, afilu lo ketfelim ganken. And the mazals are nothing, just like the axe. The axe doesn't do anything. True. Listen, the needle for the tailor, yeah? The needle for the tailor is everything. Right? There's no way the tailor can come up with a garment without a scissor and a needle. But at the same time, if you put a needle in a place, you give it the best scissor and the best fabric, you come back the next day, there's nothing there. It's not going to do anything. And it's not missing, it's not lacking anything, and it's not growing anywhere. It's nothing happening. So that's why it's not even secondary. It's a tool. Right? The axe is not a secondary worker or partner, assistant. The axe is not an assistant to the builder. It's a tool. אינם אפילו כתפלים, גם כן שאינם נחשבים למאומה ממש, מאחר שהם רק כשלוחים לבד. Like agents. ואין בהן כוח מעצמן כלל וכלל, ואין בהם שום ממש. It's like the difference. It is quite sensitive, and I have to admit, but it's like the difference between the hardware and the software. The hardware is built in a way that the software can shine through it. But the hardware has no clue and no understanding and no opinion or choice whatsoever whether or not the software is going to operate and how and for how long. It's built in a certain way, but it's inexistent in terms of autonomy and will, desire, understanding, connection, or anything like that. And the hardware, the fact that you're going to say, yeah, but the hardware, without the hardware, you don't have anything, the result. Yeah, but the hardware is not self-made. The hardware was made by the person. Even the axe is made by the person who chopped wood in order to be able to have an axe. So how was the first axe made?
who's the one who
invented? Yeah. We have in Pashas Bereshis. How did he chop the first wood?
Oh, he tongs, tzvas, mitzvahs, so yeah.
Yeah. Hashem created the first plier. To make metal, you need fire. To hold a metal in the fire, you need another piece of metal because it's too hot. So you needed Hashem to do it. Someone has to create the first one. Now, again, to all the scientists out there, I'm sure you guys have a way to explain that the first tool was not created by God. There's a story. I'm sure there's a story to put God away from that picture, but I'm not the expert.
They made Ashmashas, right? They say
10 things were created Ben Hashmashas. All the things that were created Ben Hashmashas are not fully physical matters. They're in between. There are things that were like, think about it. Yeah, PR. Everything that were supernatural creatures. Pia Be'er, the Be'er of Miriam, the Shamir. Pia Asain, the mouth of the donkey. Eloi Shali Avram Avinu, the ram. It was there since Ma'aseh Bereshis. Where did it come from? The man.
Why did that have to be created Ben Hashmashas?
Because the man itself, it's food, but it's not food.
Yeah,
it's Bein Hashmashas. It's in between. It's Shabbos, but it's not Shabbos. It's sabbatical, but it's not. You know, they say God needed 6 full days to create the whole world. And then last second, he woke up, 1 second, Ben Hashmashas, 10 more things.
And one of those are the street.
shower, cut your nails.
Yeah.
No,
It says
streets of
it says that's where we get it from. That last minute, Erev Shabbos, no matter what time Shabbos is, last minute, you had 6 days to prepare for it. You knew exactly what time Shabbos was. You knew exactly what you had to do. You knew exactly how long it takes.
Yeah.
And you were relaxed 2 hours ago. Now what happens? We know that they are powerless, and that the only power they have is whatever power have been injected through them. Can't even say that they're being given some power. The sun was not given power. The sun has been injected energy. That is the result of what the sun is. Right? And to us, it seems like we're fully dependent in it. By the way, it sounds very foolish when it's like worship the sun, right? Who needs the sun? Guess what? There is good reasons to be a follower of the sun. And feeling that without the sun, we've got nothing. And thanks to the sun, we got everything. And when we have the sun, you're grateful, etc., etc. It's so easy.
Well, we thank Hashem for.
Yeah, but it's very easy to leave him out of the equation and recognize the immense power that the sun appears to have. But here we're saying, no, he doesn't have power. He's a channel, he's a hardware through which Hashem makes his main energy, which is the solar energy on planet Earth, shine through. And the proof is that sometimes nature is going to be defied. Sometimes we see that Hashem defies the rules of nature. And that itself is enough to prove to us that they're not in charge. Otherwise it would have never happened. When there's a glitch, right? When God forbid there's something that goes wrong, it's not surprising. You know what's surprising? That till now everything was going right. It's so easy for things to go wrong. So one time showing you that it goes wrong, it's enough for you to understand that every time it goes right, there's someone in charge.
And like, how are there not more accidents on the road?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, unless we're talking about the Lebanese beepers. Yeah. They were not by accident. Yeah, I mean, this is really not an accident. No. So he says, for example, ולפעמים מרים זה למעלה, איך שאין שום כוח במזלות לעשות דבר מעצמם. Sometimes we do show. From above, Hashem shows us how mazalas cannot function on their own. For example, when, כמו במצרים, שנידונו בעשר מכות, ולא הועילה להם ירסם שעבדו למזל טלה להצילם. It didn't work, the fact that they worshipped the goats to save them from all those curses and natural catastrophes that were happening one after another. ואדרבה, ובכל אלוקי מצרים אעשה שפטים, אני השם. Hashem said, I will make miracles and wonders among the many idols and gods of Egypt, because I know that this is who I'm challenging right now. And ובזמן החורבן, time of the destruction, it was the opposite. החליף המזלות והשרים העליונים. Hashem shifted and overpowered the messengers, the ambassadors of evil, against the messengers and ambassadors of good, and enabled and allowed the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. As part of the natural structure of this world is that Bnei Israel are on their land, and they serve Hashem, and other nations fear them and partially contribute to them and benefit from them. And when Hashem shifted because of because of our deeds and our actions, our wrongdoings, Hashem managed to shift the powers, and the invincible nation was defeated. The temple of God was destroyed. There's a very painful kina, lamentation, on Tisha B'Av that we say, describing how it was, Eicha, how it was B'tzeisi Mitzrayim, and how it is B'tzeisi Yerushalayim. When we went out of Egypt, how joyful, how great, how respected, how victorious, healthy, wealthy, strong, united, empowered we were. And when we went out of Yerushalayim, we were chased and deported, mass deportation of Jews from Yerushalayim, how sad, terrible, crushed, humiliated, destroyed, murdered, hungered, starved when we went out of Yerushalayim. That itself is doing the impossible. It's not meant to be like that. Yerushalayim is supposed to be Ora Shel Olam, the light of the world, light of the nation. And suddenly, boom! For us, it's normal that it's not, but for what it was and what it was supposed to be, it was completely a shift and transformation of the rules of nature. And unfortunately, what we see is that sometimes, like, the Israeli army is so sophisticated that is able to know everything. During COVID, they were controlling people. If you tested positive on COVID and you get close to someone's house, they knew they would arrest you and give you a fine. They don't know what's going on on the other side of the fence. One general said that if a boar would touch the fence, the alarm would ring. If a bird would touch the fence, and so Eicha Haisa Levisa. How is that possible? It's Hashem changed the rules. The fact that Hashem changes the rules once is enough to tell us that even when the rules are in place, they're not self-made. The rules is Hashem running the rules. To be continued in Mitzvah Hashem.